Welcome back to Story Behind the Painting, brought to you by Muzea, and today in episode 30, we step straight into the high-stakes arena of 16th century royal image-making and naval warfare. Take a look at this masterpiece. Painted around 1590, this is the iconic Armada portrait of Queen Elizabeth I of England. At first glance, it looks like a dazzling display of wealth and royal fashion. But make no mistake, this is not just a portrait. It is one of the most brilliant, calculated works of political propaganda ever created. Centuries before modern spin doctors and PR agencies existed, Queen Elizabeth I mastered the art of visual power. Today we break down every hidden symbol, explore the historic battle that birthed this image, discover who commissioned and painted it, and look at the master artist behind the brush. Let's dive in.
Welcome to Story Behind the Painting, where we dive into the most famous art routes and learn a lot from that.
To truly understand this painting, we must look past the surface and decode its rich layers of symbolism. Notice her face. She appears smooth, flawless, and completely ageless. In reality, when this picture was painted around 1590, Elizabeth was about 56 years old. Her face is intentionally unshadowed and painted with a stark white complexion. This created the Mask of Youth, an official image designed to reassure her subjects that the Queen and by extension England were vibrant and eternal. Elizabeth wears an extraordinary black gown adorned with hundreds of pearls, diamonds, and delicate lace. Her immense lace ruff radiates outward like the rays of the sun, positioning her as the source of light and order. Pearls signify purity, chastity, and also point to the ocean, reinforcing her triumph over the seas. Instead of a scepter, her right hand rests firmly upon a globe. Her fingers land over North America and the Atlantic Ocean, signaling expanding maritime power. Behind the Queen, two windows act as visual bookends to history. On the left, we see the English fleet sailing into formation on calm open seas, preparing fire ships. On the right, dark clouds, violent waves, and Spanish galleons crash onto jagged rocks. The scene references the Protestant winds, the fierce northern storms that destroyed the retreating Spanish fleet. The narrative message is clear: God favored Protestant England and struck down her enemies. To truly grasp the power of the Armada portrait, we need to look beyond the canvas and understand who is in this picture and where it is set. At the heart of the image sits Queen Elizabeth I, portrayed not just as a person, but as a sovereign and semi-divine figurehead. She is the Virgin Queen, symbolically married to her country serene, while the world burns around her. Notice the carved chair behind her left shoulder with a mermaid motif taken from Tudor folklore. In Tudor folklore, mermaids lured sailors to their doom, so here the mermaid suggests Elizabeth's power to destroy invading sailors. Though Elizabeth is the only human visible, two pivotal men shape the story behind this painting. Sir Francis Drake appears as the patron and naval hero, the circumnavigator and vice admiral, credited with using fire ships off Calais. Scholars widely believe Drake commissioned the primary Tyrwhitt-Drake version to commemorate the victory and cement his loyalty to the crown. King Philip II of Spain is absent from the frame, but his presence looms over the storm in the right window. Philip launched 130 ships and over 30,000 men to overthrow Elizabeth, and the crashing Spanish ships flying the cross of St. Andrew represent the collapse of his imperial pride. Where is this scene taking place? In the artwork itself, Elizabeth sits inside a grand, idealized palace gallery overlooking the ocean. To her right rests an imperial crown on a table covered in green velvet. This setting represents Greenwich Palace, the birthplace of Elizabeth and the heart of Tudor naval command. However, like much of Tudor art, this location is symbolic rather than a literal snapshot. The two window scenes depict events separated by weeks of time and miles of open sea, yet they are brought into a single room to serve a grand narrative. Why was this monumental painting created at this specific moment? Just 1 year prior, Elizabeth executed her cousin Mary, Queen of Scots, triggering outrage across Catholic Europe. The Armada victory was Elizabeth's ultimate vindication and proof that God sanctioned her Protestant rule. For Sir Francis Drake, commissioning this painting was a political power move that displayed his closeness to the monarch and immortalized his naval triumph. The design was so effective that multiple versions were produced by different workshops across the country. One version remained in Drake's family for centuries and is now housed at the Queen's House in Greenwich. Another belonged to the powerful Sackville family at Woburn Abbey, and a third resides in the National Portrait Gallery in London. Through Drake's patronage and the Queen's strategic image, making the Armada portrait became the definitive visual record of Tudor triumph. It was a masterpiece designed to outlast centuries. So why did Drake commission it? To celebrate a national miracle. It served as a permanent monument to England's survival and victory over the superpower of Europe. Drake presented and displayed this masterpiece to publicly honor his queen and showcase his absolute devotion to the Tudor crown. Female rulers in 16th century Europe were constantly viewed with suspicion. Elizabeth used portraits like this to prove her divine right to rule, projecting an image that was as invincible as any king. In fact, this design was so effective that 3 primary versions of the Armada portrait were created, allowing this powerful image to be displayed across key noble estates as nationwide propaganda. Who was the artist behind this masterpiece? The painting is traditionally attributed to George Gower. George Gower was an English gentleman turned painter born around 1540. Unlike many foreign painters who came to court, Gower was native-born English. By 1581, his talent earned him the prestigious title of Sergeant Painter to Queen Elizabeth I. As Sergeant Painter, Gower was responsible for painting royal residences, coats of arms, and creating official portraits. He held immense control over how the monarch was visually represented. Gower championed a uniquely Tudor style focused on intricate line work, rich textures, heraldry, and symbolic detail. Look at the exquisite lace velvet textures and jewel work in the Armada portrait that show Gower's signature mastery. Gower proposed a monopoly patent requiring all portraits of Queen Elizabeth I to be based on approved face patterns. This established standardized branding across the kingdom long before modern media existed. The Armada portrait isn't simply a record of a naval victory, it is the visual birth certificate of an emerging global power. At a time when female monarchs were widely viewed by European courts as fragile and vulnerable, Elizabeth I used this canvas to transform her very body into an unyielding fortress of state power. Every single element in this image was engineered with calculated intention. The mask of youth deliberately erased the physical realities of aging, offering her subjects an ageless, immortal sovereign. The imperial globe staked England's claim on the New World, shifting the nation's identity from an isolated island to a rising world empire. The divided background reframed a chaotic storm, assisted victory into undeniable proof of divine favor. Through the skilled hand of George Gower, fine art became the ultimate instrument of statecraft. Centuries before television, social media, or modern spin doctors, Queen Elizabeth recognized that to rule effectively, she did not just need to command the seas, she had to master public perception. She took a moment of existential crisis and turned it into the definitive myth of Tudor triumph. More than 400 years later, when we look into the serene, unblemished gaze of Elizabeth I, we are not looking at a realistic photograph of a 56-year-old monarch. We are standing in front of one of the most effective political branding campaigns in human history. A timeless monument to authority, propaganda, and the art of monarchical survival. Thank you for joining us on episode 30 of Story Behind the Painting. If you love discovering the hidden secrets behind the world's greatest artworks, we have some exciting news. Make sure to download the brand new version of the Muzea app today. With the new update, you can explore world-class art collections from your phone. You can rate and review your favorite museums and exhibitions, earn points every time you review or engage, accumulate points to participate in our exclusive giveaways and win amazing prizes, art prints, museum passes, and more. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below telling us what painting we should feature in episode 31. Download the Muzea app now and start earning rewards today. See you next time.